All right, welcome back to the new game, music and soundtrack. Soundtrack, that's funny. Anyways, we're here today to really take a look at game music and sound effects and how we integrate them into Unity. Directly, we don't want to look at the middleware, we don't want to take advantage of this stuff yet. It's really just going to be through triggers and codes, essentially. Now, full disclaimer, I am not a good person to explain these codes and all this stuff. A lot of them are going to be copy-paste, things you can find online, or just common codes that people use all the time. I'm sure most of you will be able to explain it way better than I can, because I know a lot of you are either developers or programmers or just fall into coding. But yeah, no, essentially it's really just to have like a few tools to use and some ways to integrate music and sounds into your game. The first few things we're going to look at are colliders. So colliders are just game objects you can find in Unity. These things are going to help us, in our specific case, trigger sounds and music. And we're going to take a look at stingers. If you don't know, stingers is... I'll actually explain stingers in a couple seconds. I'll be also showing you how to use 3D objects. So sounds you have inside the world that you really want to maintain that presence, right? So imagine a radio. You put music or sound in that radio. You really want to be able to distinguish it left and right, essentially, to know where it's coming from. And this is kind of what 3D objects we're going to talk about today. And background music. Background music are going to be just the main music we're going to be hearing, the main themes of the games and all that stuff. So yeah, let's take a look and see what we can do today. First of all, stingers. Stingers is just a little tiny music cue that you hear inside a game whenever there's a game event that happened. So player dies, you hear like tom tom tom, you know, that could be a stinger. You loot collected, doo doo doop, you know, you hear something, you know, it defines it. It really just gives perspective again to the game, and that's a stinger. The most common stingers are the ones you can find in Super Mario, for example. So take a look, and honestly, there are the most common. You would recognize them immediately. I also think it's pretty important to talk about diegetic music versus non-diegetic music. It's pretty easy. So as I said, sounds only we can hear versus sounds both of us and the character can hear. That's actually not completely true, but let me just explain a bit further. So non-diegetic music is background music, you know, like actual themes, music themes, stingers like we just talked about, voiceover narration, so whenever someone's talking about the narration in the story, UI sound effects. All these things are basically sounds that the characters inside the world cannot hear. Why I'm explaining this is because some of the sound effects we're going to include today are going to be sounds. They're going to be both diegetic and non-diegetic music and sounds. So non-diegetic, again, is just sounds that the characters cannot hear and only we can hear. As for diegetic music, is sounds that mainly the characters will be able to hear. Most of it is going to be things that both we and the characters can hear, but a lot of times, you know, sometimes, very rarely, I guess, it's going to be things that only the characters can hear, and we're going to go like, we can't hear it, but maybe the characters can, you know, we don't know. So things, for example, like the radio or TV playing. I'm sure a lot of you play GTA or Grand Theft Auto. You're cruising around and you're hearing music in the car, you know, that is diegetic music. Because the characters can hear it. Music performances, maybe the character goes to a bar and there's a band playing. That's diegetic music. Dialogue, obviously, ambience, you know, you're in a forest, you hear birds, I'm pretty sure the characters can hear it too. So all these things are diegetic music, and they're very useful to also create a nice little add-on color to the world, essentially, shall we say. So the first thing, I just have a world right here that I created. It's pretty self-explanatory. It's pretty simple, clearly nothing crazy. It's pretty silly, honestly. But yeah, it's just a little green place with a bunch of characters that I have. There's a green character, a blue character, and a little red character right over there. There he is. He's called Red Boy. Anyways, so essentially here, this little tiny world, I'm just gonna show you how to implement certain sounds. So clearly we have different objects in this world. And here is the main theme. Alright, like I'm not gonna actually play the entire thing. But essentially, yeah, so this is the little world I have for you guys. What I really want to focus on, so the whole theme itself, I wanted to play on a loop and in the background, right? So and I have a bunch of other sounds as well, like this. This is gonna be for the spaceship. I also have this little drone for this monolith. Like I want this to sound whenever I go through it, essentially. I got also voices, so a few voices for the robots you've seen.
Hey, watch where you're going, human. One step closer and it will be the last. I was once a human like you, but then I realized life on Earth was just hopeless.
Alright, this guy might be a little depressed. We also have footsteps, so footstep sounds. Pretty standard. So the way these were implemented actually is through the script of the first person player, so the actual controller script. I would suggest maybe also taking a look at the development track from Fuad from yesterday. He showed other people how to use it from animations, which is really cool. But just a little indication how it's done is on the script, in the script itself. Let me just get into it. So it's a lot of data in there. Yeah, no, we don't want to trigger audio yet. So I'm just gonna Command F and maybe find the audio. So let me just do this. So there's a lot of stuff going on, as you can tell. Let me just go to audio. And you can tell the footsteps are just right there. So I created some variables and some strings just to guys. Actually, this script is actually not something that I've created. These are actually already made. Again, a lot of these scripts you can find online. They're very basic. And also, it's also very standard to every single game. It's different, but for this one, it's pretty standard. It's just a whole player thing, including footsteps that we've added. So there you go. So played, you have the jump. You should have a land as well. And you should be able to see them right here. So in the audio source. So right now it's empty, but when you walk, you're going to be able to see its change, essentially. So unfortunately, I won't be going through the entire script. I know it's kind of counterproductive, but I won't be doing it justice, unfortunately. But yeah, you just have the normal footsteps, you have the jump sounds, you have the land sounds, pretty basic stuff. So maybe let's just take a look at a bit of the script, see if anything else I missed. No, we're good. So maybe let me just show you how it works, I guess. All right, so as I said, you have the jump and the land right there. I'm just gonna minimize everything here. It's just that, so that with audio clip, like I said, it's empty. Let me show you what it does when you walk. So obviously you land here. So you see it changes with every single step you take. So if you jump, it jumps, it shows jump. If you land, it shows land. If you walk, it shows footsteps. I won't really be getting too deep into the footsteps for today, but it really just is part of the script. Another thing I want to talk about is the rectangle of mystery, essentially. I want, like I said before, I want, whenever I go through it, I want to hear something. So let me just add an audio source. As you can tell here, I just went to add component and I put audio source. And right here you see a little speaker. That means there's music or sound attached to that right now. Well, nothing yet, but we're gonna make that happen. I don't want it to loop. I don't want it to play on awake. Play on awake means that whenever you enter the game, you're gonna hear it. I don't want that. So what I really want is whenever I go through it, you're gonna hear it. So let me just show you how that's done. So first thing, I want to find the actual audio file. There it is. And I want to drag it. You can also maybe, instead of dragging, you can also press the little circle here and you'll be able to find it in that list. So yeah, so now we have that. Oh, there's feedback a little bit. We want to make sure that the box collider, you see that it says is trigger? We want that there. Now, as you can tell, no matter how much you try, it's not gonna work because we actually do have to include a code. But why I want the trigger to be there is because, as you can tell, I can't go through it if the trigger is not checked. So I want to check that right there. And perhaps now let's just add the code. The code is actually called trigger audio. It's a very simple code. It's really just we want to make sure that the auto source and the box collider match, essentially. So let me just show you what it looks like. So that is it. Pretty small code. It's not large whatsoever. It's we have the public class, so trigger audio. This is the mono behavior. We just added to make sure that the mono, that rectangle, whenever we go through it, so we want to trigger that audio through it, right? And we want it to play, we want it to stop. So this is the audio source right there. So this is just like circumstances. If there's no audio, there's audio. I really just want to make sure that right here says if my audio source is playing, you want it to play and you want it to stop. And my audio source will play. So this is really just to combine and to kind of fill the gap between the audio source and the box collider. So now that we have that thing, that little code, let's see how it works. There you go, the little bram, you hear the little noise. Beautiful. Now, one more thing I want to add is maybe that spaceship right here. I want to add sound, a 3D sound that really just presents that spaceship, you know, a little like hover sound. And we do actually have that. But first, let me just go to the actual object itself. There we go, and as always, I'm just gonna add an audio source to it. So just audio source when you go to get component. And there we go. Now you see the little like speaker right here. So I'm just gonna go to my audio source. I'm just gonna click on that circle this time. Click on the hover that I want. Of course, I don't want it to play on, actually I do want to play on awake, and I do want it to loop. So unlike the footsteps, I wanted to, unlike the Bram, I wanted to loop and I want it to sound awake. Now what it is 2D, so I want it to be 3D. So I really want it to be a surround sound effect, essentially. I don't want it to hear from everywhere. Now what is a Doppler? Doppler is, you know when you go through an ambulance go through you, an ambulance is driving around you, and you hear that wee, like it changes. That is a Doppler effect because the frequencies change and the frequencies are exceeding a certain limit of speed. So you don't want it to go all the way. A 0.5 or 1 is perfect for this situation. And I'm gonna go for linear here. This is basically is how do you want the interaction, because I don't want it to just hear from everywhere, right? I want to hear from once you get close. So you see here minimum distance is 1, that's perfect, and maximum is there. So let me show you how it is. As you can tell, you heard it everywhere. That's not very great. So I'm just going to keep it at 40 right now. And the Doppler, let me show you what happens if you put it to the maximum actually. It's going to get freaky. Bam, just because I like doing that. So you can tell the distance is fine, but there's a lot of changes happening to the sound, and we don't want that. So reducing that Doppler effect, Doppler to 0.5 or 1, I like 1 personally. Let me maybe just type it in. There you go. So maybe having it at 1 is perfect, and take a look, honestly. So no matter where you are, you won't hear it, but the closer you get to hear the sound. And it's 3D, so if you go to the left, you hear on the right. If you go to its right, you hear on the left. So there we go, that's exactly what I want. Now this guy, you can tell I've added a little aim, so he looks at you no matter where you go. I don't know why I did that, I just wanted to. And this guy, let me give him a voice. I want to, whenever I get close, I want him to say, "Hey, watch where you're going, human." So let's just go ahead and do that. I'm just gonna go to the blue boy. His name is Blue Boy. There's Blue Boy, Orange Boy, and Red Boy. So Blue Boy gets here. I'm just gonna go ahead and create an audio source like we just did. But one thing I want to do before that is something called a collider. So like we talked about before, I want something around him that would trigger it. So there you go, that's a sphere collider. The distance is perfect, the ratio is perfect. The only thing I want to make sure is, again, I want it to go and trigger, because if I don't, let me show what happens if I don't press the little is triggered. So there you go. It's usually good, but for the situation I want right now, I don't want that. I want to be able to go through him, through that robot. So I press is triggered. And you can tell, boom, I can just go through them immediately. Because pressing is triggered is what's going to allow it to trigger the sound. So let me just go ahead and do that. So I'm going to go audio source. And again, I'm just going to select the voice. I think it's just called voice for this one. There we go. And I don't want it to play on awake. I don't want it to loop. I can maybe do a 3D. Actually, it was 2D before. I'm going to make it 3D. I don't want a Doppler effect. And the distance itself, I can keep it for, yeah, that's completely fine. We just change the distance a little bit. Maybe that's a bit too much. There we go. And the last thing we need to do, well, yeah, is actually maybe add the code. So the same code we added for the to the rectangle, we're adding it here. Just because. And one thing is I forgot to put is triggered. Because if you make changes in the game and you exit the game, the changes don't save. This is a good lesson to keep in mind. So now we should be able to hear his voice once we get close. So right now he's just staring at us. Right now nothing. And there we go. He's telling us to bugger off, essentially. And there you go. This is how you add a voice And now let's add one for that orange person over there. As you can tell, they're pretty isolated. They're sitting down. I kind of want them to be a little angry. The angry voice, that's what I'm going to associate to that person. Same exact steps. I'm going to go to orange boy right there. I'm going to add a component. Well, first let me just zoom in so I can take a look at them. That's true, I already had a mesh collider. As you can tell, it's a little larger than the blue one, which is perfect. It's exactly what I want. I want a further distance. So once I am further away, I want him to speak. So let me just add the audio source. I want to add voice number 2. And I want to add, there, just making sure that it's the right one. I don't want awake, I don't want it to loop. So same thing, Doppler effect, go down, 3D, and we're back to 40. And one more thing I want to make sure of is that it works. There you go. You can hear that robot all angry because he got in their personal space. And I'm just going to run away because I do not want to mess with them, but just a little bit. There we go. Let's run away now. No! Don't hurt me, orange person. Alright, red person, the depressed person. As you can tell, there's a little animation, an idle animation, that I've integrated to that little robot. And let's do the exact same thing we just did, but for the third voice. Again, it's good to have a good idea and perspective of how they look like during this process. Because again, the collider, you want to make sure it's the right distance. Like this one, for example, is in between the blue and the red and the green. It's not too big, it's not too small. That's a good amount. Same thing, it's just going to select my voice, remove this, put a 3D, get rid of that Doppler effect. I forgot to do that. There we go. And distance, let's make it 40 again. And it should be fine. And there you go. Hopefully I'm not going too fast.
I was once a human like you, but then I realized life on Earth was just hopeless.
Alright, the one last thing I want to add is the big speaker in the sky, aka the background music. That is probably the easiest thing to do. So first thing we're going to do is actually, let me just adjust. I'm just going to add a game object. You can also do it from the menu. Nope, not here, not here. No, there it is. Okay, let me just make sure. No, there we go, there it is. So you just go create empty. You can also do it, you can right click here and just go create empty. Now I'm gonna call it the outer space speaker. No. Just music. Music will be fine. So in music, just add components, audio source, and we're just gonna drag or insert the music. I call this piece Hybrid City because it's a little hybridy with the technology, the robots and the grass. I want it to loop, I want it to play on awake. I don't want a 3D. And I'm just gonna reduce the volume a little bit because it might be a little loud. But essentially that's just it. For music, that's all you need to do. There you go. You can hear the music. Let's just make sure all our sounds are good. Boom, sorry sir, I didn't see you there. Let me just go take a look at that spaceship. It sounds okay, great. Let me just go take a look and that's it. And there you go, all sounds and music were integrated. The one thing maybe I was just gonna check is the orange person right there. And I'm making sure that the music loops as well. And there you go. Actually, maybe I would adjust the distance between the characters instead of 40, maybe like 100 or something, because they fade away too easily. So maybe I would adjust that. But other than that, it seems like it's back in order. Everything, the sounds are there, the music is there. But let me just adjust this real quick. I'm also maybe going to reduce the volume a bit. And there we go. I'm just going to higher the distance. 300 would be perhaps applicable. I'm just going to do the same thing for the blue and for the red. It should be a little easier now to hear them, perhaps, so let me just take a look. Alright, they don't fade as easily as before, so that's good. Let me check on the orange. Let me check the spaceship first. Great, sounds still good. Let me check that orange. That's not too bad. And last but certainly not least are the Precioso boy. Boom. Actually, of course, the rectangle. But let's take a look at the red guy. Alright, something's a little odd with him. I'll probably like fix it on off screen, but other than that, it seems like it's perfectly fine. So there you go. We've successfully integrated sound and music to our little world as easily as that. And now our next thing is perhaps let's show you how we can change the music in certain ways. And I'm just making sure it loops. And also we made sure that the music loops. That's perfect. That's exactly what I wanted. So branching, if you guys remember horizontal resequencing, this is also called branching. I'm just going to show you how we can branch from track to track pretty easily as well. Of course, we're going to be using codes, 2 codes actually. These codes are actually pretty simple. They're not large codes to understand. Really just picture an iPod and just playing next. That's exactly what we'll be doing depending on the track and depending on the map. So I got 2 maps. I added a little map to our world here, a little sand-ish map. It doesn't look like sand, but we're just going to pretend it's sand. I got 2 triggers, 2 rectangular triggers that you can clearly see because I'm really bad at my job. Actually, it's not really my job, but I'm really bad at this. We got a sand and we got a grass. And that's literally it. So once I step through one of them, I want the track to change, right? So that is the first code. So actually both codes are right there. So this is the first code right here. Pretty simple. I just added a public string. And this is really just this is what's managing the song and the soundtrack to change from track to track. Really imagine again the play, the iPod, little play, pause. This is what it is essentially. It's reinventing that essentially. And this track, this code is a little different. It's the same thing. This is what's going to enable it to choose what track goes next essentially. This is the playlist, if you want, almost. So you wanted to find things, to find the next track. And I want to make sure that whenever the character or the player goes through it, it's going to trigger the next track, essentially. And we'll be able to choose the track inside Unity and doing that, I'll show you actually how it is. So let me just go back perhaps to Unity. There we go. And we should be able to find it right there. This is the auto source. It's going to be like the main, essentially the main theme that we have is Hybrid City. That's fine. So this is the sand map, the sand track. This is the trigger. It's a collider. It's just a box collider that I've enhanced a bit. And again, I want to make sure it's triggered because we want to make sure I go through it, and I want to make sure it triggers music. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually add the actual piece itself. So we've added the script to the triggers, and we've added the pieces to the actual, like you see right here. So really just whenever we press play, we should be able to walk through it, and we should be able to hear it. And there you go, with very simple branching or horizontal resequencing. We went from one track to the other by changing maps. Now, here's another example, a little world I've created with free assets as well. Asylum, and I've mixed some nature. It's like I mix a bunch of assets together. A little more spooky, a little more horror-ish. Essentially, it's the same principle. I've had a few triggers all over the place. This is the entire assets. I like it a lot, honestly. And I've added a few lamps as well. But essentially, yes, you see those are triggers. Those are going to be the triggers that I have. And every single trigger is going to create something new. So there we go. We got that. We got that. And the end has to be like the ending song, you know, where we ended. So let's take a listen. Don't be too scared. And there you go. You've heard the stingers, the little sound effects, or little pieces of music, and you heard also the intro, the first part right here. So there you go. I want those pieces to get triggered whenever I go through the triggers, the colliders. It's going to be the exact same process as we did before. I'm just going to go through a new script. I'm just going to basically copy the exact script I did before for the previous map. Yeah, new script. I'm just going to do the same thing and just attach it to the different triggers and colliders, and we'll do the exact same thing. So here we are. Once we have the triggers, we have the audio. We have that audio manager. That's important, of course, and it's also attached to the actual speaker. Nope, I think it's in neither of those. I'll just go ahead and edit it. Let me just close those just to be sure I don't get too confused, because it's very possible. That's still not here. So let me just go edit scripts. That's how you can actually pull it up. And there you go. Same script as before. Doesn't change. They didn't change whatsoever. So once we have those scripts, again, we just want to make sure that the actual triggers creates the next track, essentially, right? You want it to play, you want it to stop, you want it to play the next one. And same thing with this one, exact same script. If you guys want the scripts, let me know and I'll send them to you through Discord or something. Yeah, this is just me making sure they're all good. This is to make sure to find the next track. And again, think of an iPod. Think of the interface. This is it. This is the interface. So let me just show you how it's done, how it's gonna sound like actually. So first of all, we also want to make sure that here it says player. The tag has to be player for it to work. Alright, so we've added the different tags. I'm just gonna go ahead and make sure they're all there. So each one of them is gonna actually lead and play a different track like we did before. And this is gonna be the ending. And there you go, congratulations! You've successfully escaped the imaginary and non-existent enemies. I do not know how to add enemies, I will probably never do, but it could be a nice, maybe a little tiny game for this. Anyways, let's find out how to use animations. So, using animations to trigger sounds. Now some of you have attended Fuad's workshop yesterday. This is the game he created for the workshop. He showed people how to do it. Let's take a look at it real quick. It's pretty cool, right? And you hear the footsteps, which he implemented himself. He showed you how to do it through animation. But I have a few sounds here we can listen to real quick. So essentially, those are just sounds I've made real quick for this game. I'm just going to show you how to implement them essentially. So we've got obviously the healing, the damage. We've got some sword swings. and of course the music. I mean, honestly, pretty simple stuff. It's just basic sound effects, a basic music track, just nothing really crazy. So let's just start with the easiest thing, the music. You just create an empty object. You go to audio source, like we did here, and we're just gonna drag it in. Done. We want it to play on awake. We want it to loop. Maybe lower the volume a little bit, and that's it. Again, let's listen. Alright, we have the heroic music, we have the footsteps. Let's add that swing in there, that sword swing. So we need coding for this. So let's just go to the character hierarchy right there. I'll just add the script. It's called sound effects. And I'm just gonna basically show you how it looks like. It's a very, very simple script as well. If it'll load, oh, there we go. So we have the audio source to be able to choose. We have, I called it the sound effects, of course. And this is important because we want to make sure that the actual sound plays, and I've called it the sword swing plays whenever the animation goes through. So we're using that code to attach the audio to the animation, essentially. So let's just create another object. Right here, if I'd already included the footsteps, I'm just going to include the sword swing. And I'm adding an audio source, and this is exactly where I want to add my music. So I'm adding it to a different object. I'm adding to an empty object, not so empty anymore. I don't want it to loop. I don't want to play on awake. I want it to be not too loud. So let's now find out how we can add it to the animation, right? So over here you have animations. You have two different ones, the enemies and you. You want the knight, and you want the attack. There we go. So right here, you have a little white thing says add event. You want to add an event. And over here, I want to write sword swing or swing sword. And that should work. So let me just take a look and see if it did. Nope, something is wrong. Okay, let me just see exactly what's going on. Just making sure. I'm actually taking a look at for ads thing, just making sure. And this is mine as well. Maybe the parentheses will work. Nope, still not happening. Let me just double check everything. So it's probably something in the script. Nope, still not. Okay, I'm just gonna investigate. So I am voice overing after this. I know exactly what's the issue. The reason why I kept this is because to show you how petty Unity actually is. So it is a way of learning. Still not working. Mika took a very long time to figure it out. So essentially it was just a question of misspelling, right? So if you do one letter that's not capitalized and you capitalized it, or if it's supposed to be capitalized but you didn't, it will mess up the entire thing. So I went back to the script right here, if it ever loads, and I took note of everything. I'm like, okay, I just went to check if everything was right. And that's when I noticed that the actual code itself is not right. The one I've included in the animation is not right. There should be a capital S. Well, technically, yeah, the words were just inverted. And now it worked. It should work. There we go, it works. And there you go. Again, the whole reason I kept this entire mistake is to show you that be careful for every single letter when you mess with Unity. They're petty. They're very petty. Anyways, let's move on now to damage of the enemies. It's the same exact process, so we're just gonna go ahead and listen to it. It's just a little block. It's nothing special. It's actually pretty bad, but I don't care anymore. It's fine. It's not. We're not publishing this game, so we're okay. So I'm just creating an empty object. I called it enemy hit. Same process. I'm just gonna add an audio source. I'm just gonna make sure I'm dragging it there. I don't want it to play on awake. There we go. And the volume may be a little low. And over here on the enemies themselves, I want to add the script that we just created before. I'm gonna do that for every single one, but first let me just add the actual sound right here. And I'm gonna do that for every single one of those enemies. There's 3 in total, so 3 different, same script for 3 different enemies. And voila. And last thing is, let's not forget, we need to add the animation. So right here. So like I said, there's 2 different animations, one for us, one for the enemies. We're going for the enemies. You see them right here. We're going for those enemy people. We want that one, that animation specifically. Here it is. So you have the hit and you have the normal one. I just want that one specifically. Again, add event, the little white button right here. And let's make sure we write the exact same word. So there we go. Just making sure it's the same one because I don't want to mistake it one more time. Perfect. All right, so once that's done, let me actually just show you maybe exactly what was the mistake before. I think having it visually in front of you is way better. So let's go add a script. Once again, when it loads, hopefully it loads anytime soon. There we go. So if you take a look here, it says swing sword, right? Not sword swing, and I wrote sword swing before. So essentially, yeah, we just want to make sure that one was perfectly accurate, because this you want to make sure it's the right word, right? You can make it whatever word you want. I just made that one. So now let's hear it out. And there we go, it works. My little happy dance. My happy dance is going in circles. But yes, we now know it works, so this is for the animation. Now that was it for animation. We still have a few sounds to implement. So let's start with the enemy sounds. Let me just remind you what it sounds like actually. Let me just go back. There we go. This is what it sounds like. Pretty basic, pretty silly. That's okay with me. So we just want that to implement whenever we awake. We want to hear the sounds of the enemies. So we go to the enemy, we go to audio source inside the enemy, and we're just gonna have to, there it is. We're just gonna have to drag that sound over here. We want it to play on awake and we want it to loop. It's not gonna sound good, and I'll show you how we can make it a little better. So as I mentioned, it does not sound good whatsoever. One thing actually I'm going to do is actually going to make them go into 3D. It'll be nice to have them to hear them out from there. Just to have a better location of the enemies, I'm going to make the distance a little bit low. that distance was maybe a little too low, but before we go on with this, I just want to show you a bit how to make it a little better. I'm just going to drag that audio into my DAW, into Logic Pro X here. If I'm able to do it, my coordination is horrific, but that's okay. There we go, that's the one I want. Drag, drop, yes, import, no worries. That's a new project. Okay, so now what I want to do is create one track for the audio, there we go, for the monsters, and I want to kind of, instead of having them loop, because if I only looped one audio, it's going to repeat the same audio over and over again. I want to create some gap in between those audios. So that's what I'm doing right here. As you can see, there's a bit of a gap between them, which is exactly what I want. I'm just going to adjust it a bit more. So the whole point of this is really just so this entire, including the gaps, this entire track, including the gaps, will be the thing looping, right? So let me just bounce it. Bounce it means exporting it. I'm just adjust something first. Yeah, maybe a little bit more. So this entire track is going to be the thing looping. So it has to go through the entire track first before looping again, which is good, which is exactly what we want. As you can see, there's a perfect gap. It's a bit of distance before we reach the next roar, per se. So let me just export it. And let's just call it enemy sounds. And there you go. So to put it back, first of all, I'm going to delete the actual original sound. There we go, just go right click, delete. There we go. And then I'm just going to add that one right here. It's going to take its place, as you can tell. And if we click and we press space, or we just press play, you can tell there's a gap between every single noise, which is perfect. It's exactly what we want. So now we have that figured out. There we go. Now it's already should replace it automatically, but just to be sure, I'm just going to drag it. Usually you wouldn't have to, because it's already just considered the fact that it's the same audio file, because we kept the same name. And there you go. I'm just going to do a few adjustments here. I'm going to do 3D, bit more distances just to be sure. Alright, seems like I need one more aspect. I'm just doing it for every single enemy essentially. Alright, Tiru, let's hear how they sound. Now obviously we only heard it once. I'm just going to do it linear so we can hear it a little bit better. So it actually feels more smooth. It feels smoother once we actually get closer to them. It won't be sudden hearing, so you can actually hear a bit closer and closer and closer. But at least we know the gap is there and we can hear them out. So let me just adjust a few things. So right now instead of, I'm just going to adjust the distances as well. I want to make sure that I'm able to hear them no matter where I am, but a little closer to them whenever I get to them essentially. But now thinking about it now, that was completely counterproductive. I did not have to do it with 3D because every single one, if they play together, I'm going to hear them from all the sides. So it wasn't very productive. Anyways, alright, our next quest is the healing. You want to hear that sound. Just a very silly sound I made for healing. So we're just going to be able to implement that through the script very, very easily. Let me just show you the script of the healing itself. So you went to the healing prefab, the healing flask, and you're just going to edit the script. I already have it opened. You just have to add a script, but I already have it open right there. So that's the healing flask. I've added, as you can tell, I'm basically just going to add like 1 or 2 different elements. So it's going to be a public audio source. And we want it to be, we can call it, I'm going to call it healing sound. And right here, I want, it literally says when you take it, that person, that character will get more health. That's literally what it's saying, and that's what we want. So right underneath this, I'm just going to enter. I'm just going to write the actual name, so healing sound dot play. We want it to play whenever you heal. That's as simple as that. And I'm just going to command save. Unity will do its own little updates. And there you go. So over here you realize there's a audio source that you need to fill. So that's exactly what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna add one to every single healing flask. So first let's do a game object. I'm gonna call it healing sound. And I'm gonna add the audio source to it. But I think what could be a good idea is perhaps to organize this thing. So that's music and sound effects. I'm just going to drag all of them here. I completely missed, but that's okay. I'm just going to drag them back to the music. It's basically a folder I'm creating in the hierarchy, and music and sound effect folder, just to have a bit organization in my life. Anyway, so let's go back to the healing sound. I'm just going to add an audio source, essentially, and add that to every single healing flask. So let's do this. Again, get component. We're just gonna drag it, or again, you can press that circle if you want. Remove the awake, remove the loop, reduce the volume a bit. And I'm just gonna do that for every single one of those flasks. And once we have all those new sounds implemented, let me just finish with that last one right here. Let's hear how that sounds. And never forget the happy dance. There we go. Because it worked. And there you go. You heard the healing. You heard the glops glops. Let's kill that one enemy. Nah, let's leave him alone. Alright, so last few things I wanted to add is maybe the character himself have some damage. I've also included a death sound.
Try again, loser.
But because it's such a short amount of time before you respawn, you're not going to hear it. It's going to cut and it's going to sound bad. So let's just add the damage and call it a day. I've already added that empty game object and called it damage sound into the music and the sound effect folder. So it's actually, the change is going to be done through the actual player script as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and edit that script, and I'll show you what kind of things we're going to add to it. Alright, welcome back to the script of the character. There's a lot of stuff going on. I'm just going to start off by creating a public audio source like we did before, just to have that option to add the sound to it. There we go, audio source, damage sound. And I'm just going to command F and find damage. And once you do, you have it right here, just like we did with the enemies, or the flasks, sorry, like we did with the flasks. We're just gonna be able to go enter, and I'm just gonna write the same thing. So damage sound dot play parentheses and semicolon. And once we have that, we should be able to hear it out. Now, again, this is another error that I've done. I've kept it in this workshop just to show you how petty Unity is. It will take me a little while to figure it out, but essentially it was once again a misspelling. I was wondering why I wasn't able to play it. There was an error, and I'm pretty sure you can catch it immediately. If you pay attention, you realized I messed up somewhere in the script. But maybe let me just have Mika, old Mika, figure it out. The script looked pretty good, so I was confused as to why. But not to waste time, because I'm pretty sure it's gonna take a while before I actually realize what happened, and it did take a while. Let me just speed everything up here. And there it is. I wrote damage so nude instead of damage sound. Once again, make sure you write your things correctly, because it will mess up everything. Sorry for wasting your time. There it is. Sound, I made sure everything was okay, because I got a little paranoid at the end. But now, once everything is updated with Unity, there you go, the errors should be gone as well. Beautiful. So I should press, first I'm going to make sure that everything's okay. There we go. I'm just going to able to drag now that game object with the sound inside into the first person characters, the script. So you should see now we actually have an option to add the sound into it. So we press play, we should be able to hear it. And never forget that happy dance, because we did it. There we go. That's how you basically integrate into animations and with scripts. So, layering cues through colliders. As some of you might remember from last week, we talked about vertical layering. This is what's going to happen here. We're going to be messing with some audio mixers inside the Unity to kind of fade in and fade out certain cues. That would make sense. So that way the actual track, you can choose what you want to fade in and fade out. So over here I have a little world. Again, free assets, you gotta love them. This medieval little town, and as you can tell I have a little few boxes, red and green boxes. Every single one is a layer. So on the left is layer 1, in the middle layer 2, on the right layer 3. So if I press on every single one of those greens, it should enable that layer. On the red, it should disable that layer. Again, this is solely done through scripts. A script complicated, especially for myself. I'm sure not as complicated for yourselves, but let me just show you nonetheless. So this is the script right here. It's not too long. It's a pretty simple, at least a simple script for most people, not for myself. But essentially we're talking about positions here, right? So whenever we want that trigger, once again that parameter, that trigger, that whenever you trigger a certain collider, something will happen. And in this case we're making sure that the mixers will go up or down. And this is the script that will allow us to switch between different tracks, essentially. So once again, trigger enter. Whenever you enter the trigger, it should let you in. So in case if you guys want the scripts, let me know. I'll see if I can send it to you, no problem. I did not make these scripts, unfortunately. Again, these are things you can find online. And once again, this is also an important part of mentioning, talk to your programmers, because they might have a better way of doing it as well. Because your game deserves its own way of including things. They're programming, they're designing, might interfere with this, so it's better to talk with them and make sure it works well together. So if I go audio mixers here, those are the 3 layers essentially. This is what we're going to allow us to program whether we want it to go up or down, essentially. If we want it to go higher or lower in volume. This is what we're doing essentially, just mix that. What you have to do is just go here, add mixer, or you can even just double click. There are the layers. They're under the mixer, which is under the music. Well, under music, which is under the mixer, and every single one will have the on and off layers. So we call screenshots. I'm sorry, snapshots. So the snapshots are basically turning it on or off. As you can tell, when I went to on, it was the volume was higher. When I went off, the volume was lower. So that's literally it. You're just fading them in as much as whenever you press on the green of each layer. So you can also add one. I just added layer 4, for example, if you want to add another piece. And then you can just write layer 4 on. If you go on snapshots under there, I'm just going to try to see if I can just take it to the mix. There you go. Essentially, I'm just making sure that it's part of the rest of the layers, so make sure it programs and behaves the same way. So anyways, so if you go on, I'm just going to delete that one, that was by accident. If I go to layer 4 over here, again, just making sure that it's part of the mix, I can add a snapshot, and I can just rename the first one. I just go layer 4 on, or layer 4 off, and then this one layer 4 on, and there you go. That is how you just add a layer if you wanted to. I don't need to right now. I'm just going to stick to the number 3, the 3 layers, and let me just show you how it sounds like. And there you go, pretty self-explanatory. You got the ons and off. One thing I want to talk about are this thing. I've added little stingers over here as well, bell, horn, and shouts. Essentially, whenever you go through them, you'd hear a little sound. This is just for fun. The same exact script as before. The trigger audio is just called now trigger stinger, but it's the same script as I showed you before. And as always, you want to make sure that the is triggered is on for the collider, and let's see how it sounds. And there we go, pretty easy. One thing is, I mentioned earlier that if you keep the name of the file the same, you don't have to do anything about it, and it's true. So I don't know if, again, some of you might remember these three pieces. You can change them with whatever piece you want. I'm actually going to take the same layers I've done last week for the programming for the layering. I showed you guys an example I did on my DAW. I'm just going to take 3 of those tracks and just literally just replace them with the old ones. But first you have to make sure you delete them. Just going to delete number 1. Yes sir. Number 2. And number 3. Beautiful. So now all we have to do is really just drag the new ones into here. And there you go. Same name, same everything. You don't have to do any changes. Some of you might recognize it. Again, the same piece as last week. I'm just going to open one of the mixers so that you can see it in action essentially when we play it. Here's how it looks like. It may have lagged a little bit at the end there, but essentially that is it, how to layer. Again, it's not my specialty per se, but again, there's other ways of doing it. These are not obsolete. These are not the ways to do things. These are just some of the ways to do things. And to do things pretty easily, because it is pretty simple at the end of the day. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to let me know on Discord. Again, I'm sorry I can't be here today. Gotta do that work, you know how it is. But yeah, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to let me know. And I'll see you guys next time. Have yourselves a great day, and take care.